Pat, why don't you come up and join us? Oh, good to see you. Good, great to see you. Thanks for coming.
See you.
All right.
Haven't been in here in a while. Nice to be back in class.
You got to come back and take the midterm now, just so you'll know. That's part of the deal. Okay. Just flip that to the tie. That's fine. Great.
Thank you.
Yep. Guys, hear me in the back? Okay. Special night and special people here in my life. Like virtually like a second set of parents to me growing up. Took me to USC football games and sporting events when I was a little kid. Kind of grew up into the culture of USC sports and have been very important to me throughout my life and are doing great. Still live in the same house in Long Beach near where I grew up for the last 56 years in the same house. Marion Beckman and Dr. Beckman, Don Beckman, retired orthodontist, and special people that I'd like to welcome tonight. Please. And over here is John Orr, who before it was the Rossier School of Education, he was the Dean of the School of Education, so I look at it like it was the Orr School of Education, or the Orr House, if you will. It's John Orr and his wife, Thelma Orr, longtime USC supporters and very good and honored members of the Trojan family. So John Orr and Thelma. Okay. And my friend Tom Fick, who has a wonderful nonprofit organization called Project Hollywood Cares. Tom's been in the TV sports business for a long time and had this idea of, rather than people in the entertainment business who get all the screeners and all the videos of the TV shows for screening purposes for awards, instead of just throwing them away or filing them away and never using them, why not send them to the troops overseas? So as a Navy veteran, he's taken this project upon himself to make sure that we're helping the troops as much as we can, getting them entertainment that they can enjoy, take a break from, look forward to. And it's been a selfless, long battle to do this. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money, and it's been tremendous to see the progress he's made. So very supportive and a great Trojan, Tom Fick. And internship opportunities with Tom, working on the CBS lot. So if anybody is interested in helping, always looking for a little extra help. My friend Bob Leach wrote the book just out on Coach Dato, played for Coach Dato, baseball here, called Never Make the Same Mistake Once. I love the title. We're going to talk about that at some point. I know during the semester I was the primary editor on the book. Bob's a great friend, and I'd love to have you guys take a look at that. Never Make the Same Mistake Once. It was still, I think, available in the USC bookstore or Amazon.com, but played on a couple of national championship teams in baseball here at USC. Bob Leach. Well, Pat Haden is synonymous with USC. As a varsity football player from 1972 to 74, his teams won 3 consecutive Pac-8 championships, going back a couple of steps in the evolution of the conference to the Pac-8, and 2 national championships. And that was capped by his co-MVP performance in the 1975 Rose Bowl, of which I think we have a clip from the touchdown that brought USC within 1 point to his buddy J.K. McKay, and then the 2-point conversion right after that to Shelton Diggs that won the game 18-17. Unbelievable. One of the great games in USC history. And I was in front of more than 106,000 people, by the way, at the Rose Bowl that day.
Cecil B. DeMille was the producer of this.
Just as significant, though, is that he was the epitome of the well-rounded student athlete. He graduated from USC magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, and with the ultimate prize, Rhodes Scholarship to Oxford, England. He went on to a successful 6-year NFL career with the LA Rams, included a Pro Bowl selection, almost 10,000 career passing yards, and a Super Bowl appearance for the Rams, the only one while they were in LA in 1980. Retired to become a college football broadcaster. Many of you may know that, first at CBS, and then for NBC's coverage of Notre Dame football. Bit of irony there, because Pat led USC to one of the greatest victories of all time in football history. You may have heard about it. Over Notre Dame in 1974, the Trojans trailed 24-0, scored a touchdown in the second quarter, went in the half down 24-6, came out and ended up scoring 55 consecutive points and beat Notre Dame 55-24. I'm guessing that he heard about that a few times over the years when he was in South Bend broadcasting Notre Dame football. Pat also has a law degree from Loyola. He was an accomplished businessman. He worked as a named partner for a private equity firm in Los Angeles before leaving about a year ago at this time to return to his alma mater. Never one to back down from a challenge. He's embraced his leadership role during an extremely challenging time for USC athletics. Has an incredibly busy schedule. We really appreciate him taking time to join our class tonight. My great pleasure to welcome the athletic director at USC, Pat Haden.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Delighted. Just walk right across the walkway here.
Well, this week, always kind of an exciting time. It's the first week of the college football season.
It is.
I'm wondering kind of what you remember about your first varsity game on that 72 team that ended up undefeated, untied, considered one of the greatest college teams of all time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was a sophomore in Iowa. Actually, was not the starting quarterback that year. It was a guy by the name of Mike Ray who had a phenomenal year, like almost everybody did in that team. We played. Our first game I think was at Arkansas. I had Arkansas, and I had grown up in Southern California, never really been out of the state. Went to Arkansas. There's 70,000 people wearing those pig helmets, and it was going suey pig, and I looked at my buddy J.K. McKay and said, "We have no chance of winning this game. This is very important to these people, way too important to these people." And so I played a little bit at the end of the game. We won that game, and then it had really started off on a great season. It was an unbelievable year.
What about your first memories the following week when you came home to play at the Coliseum? Your first time playing a home game there.
Yeah, I played a bunch of times in high school. I can't really quite honestly remember it. I mean, I think I do remember the very first time I played. It might have been that game at home, and big crowd. My mom's in the stands, and so Coach McKay sends me into the huddle onto the field, and I was really kind of nervous. Really want to do things right, particularly with my mom. And so I called, the play in the huddle without my voice cracking. Left the huddle with a thunderous clap. This is an absolutely true story. I walked to the line of scrimmage, surveyed the defense as every good quarterback should, and then I put my hands on what I thought was the center. The guy turned around and says, "Pat, I'm the guard. Center's one over." And to my mother's deathbed, she thought it was a trick play. But that was my very first memory of playing.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous.
Yeah. Well, you didn't have as much pressure. You weren't the starter, and that was a team that was a 51-6 game. So. Yeah,
boy, you have a good recollection, or you've taken very good notes. Yes, it sounds like we beat people pretty handily that. You only really had a few close games, but we probably ended up having, I don't know, through the whole class, sophomore, junior, senior, freshman weren't eligible in those days. Probably guys who ended up, 15 guys ended up being #1 draft picks, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really phenomenal players.
Yeah, unbelievable. So, how fun is it for you to be sitting in your office in Heritage Hall, so close to the band practices, hearing the fight song so often? Or do you just get tired of it sometimes and just want to yell out, "Get it right"?
To the band?
Yeah.
I would never say that to the band's awesome. Band's awesome. It's really, it's great because my office is right over there at Cromwell Field, and this time of year they practice, I think, harder than the football team. I mean, they have 3-a-days, and those guys lugging the tubas around and the drums. I don't know how they get those on airplanes.
Is anybody in the band here?
Well, I have great respect. 3 days, right? Don't you guys have 3 days? It's in the hot and the heat, and it's
they get
yelled at a lot. But it's awesome. And you think about if you try to put an athletic team together and you're trying to replace a point guard or a quarterback or a right tackle. Think about you have to replace the xylophone. You know, if you're Art Bartner, you're just hoping you have a bunch of xylophone players that come in as freshmen. And so he has a more difficult job than I think than Lane Kiffin does, or Kevin O'Neill kind of piecing his team together because he's got to put 300 together.
So tough to recruit a good xylophone player these days. You know, you have to go out of state sometimes. So what about something as simple as just walking through campus?
Yeah.
What feeling do you get? I remember when we had lunch about a year ago at this time with Dick Annenberg, and we were walking across, and I think I said something like, I thought eventually that just this walk like this would be something you'd really...
Well, one of the reasons I took the job is being on a college campus. You know, you all are going through it now, but when you get to be ancient like Jeff and I, it's invigorating. Young people have so much energy and are so exciting to be around, so fun to be around. It's, you know, you just kind of gather so much from their energy. And there are days where I park as far as I can away from my office, just so I force myself to walk as far as I can through the campus and such. So it's awesome. I mean, there's interesting things percolating all around every corner of this campus. That's one of the things we're trying to do with our athletic teams, is to get them out of the athletic facilities and into the general student population. Because I would feel badly if 20 years from now I ran into one of our volleyball players and she said, you know, I played volleyball at USC. I mean, we really want them to say, I went to USC, I graduated, and by the way, I happened to play volleyball. Just a little different perspective. I know we have the world's greatest athletes here at USC. Not the cities, not the states, not the countries, but the world's greatest athletes. The flip side of that is to become the world's greatest athlete, you have a really narrow life. Your view is not this, it is this. You're on that diving board, in that pool, on that court, on that field. And I don't think that's a real college experience. So one of the things, Jeff, we're really trying to do with our kids is drive that real college experience. And we're pushing and pulling. I mean, we're pushing the kids out of the athletic facilities, and we're having teachers come in. We have a new thing we're starting. I think we've got 12 professors lined up now to give really kind of mini lectures. You know, I'm Susie Stork, and I'm an engineering professor at USC, and I do this kind of research, and here's why it's important. And she speaks for 10 minutes for the football team, the volleyball team, the tennis team. And so at least they know what's going on in other areas of the campus. So to me, you know, I'm not necessarily trying to make this Stanford. That's not the goal here at all. The goal is to try to have our student athletes, all 640 of them, have a real college experience, not just an athletic experience.
Mm-hmm. Right here, actually, where Annenberg, where the auditorium is very close to where home plate was at Old Bovard Field.
When I was here, yeah.
But also where you practice.
Yes.
Before Howard Jones Field,
Mm-hmm.
Practice at Bovard. Any memories about just those years practicing?
Well,
at Bovard?
the freshmen were not eligible in those days, and the freshmen used to get the hell beat out of us every day by the varsity. I mean, they were just, you know, they were really, really tough, and they did not take it easy on the freshmen at all in those days. It was, I always remember John Papadakis, who was the linebacker, middle linebacker right across from me, you know, seething, spitting, blowing his nose on me, all kind of weird stuff. He was, you know, a very, very vicious guy. Yeah. That's kind of what I remember here. But I actually remember more watching baseball. You know, Fred Lynn and, you know, some incredible baseball players. The baseball team won 4 straight national championships when I was here on this field. And watching Fred Lynn, who came in on a football scholarship, actually watching him hit home run after home run over the right field fence.
Yeah. So this is really the beginning of year 2 for you as the athletic director. Has, you know, and you were kind of dropped right into the fire of an NCAA investigation, very high profile. Has the job been harder? Has it been easier? Or has it been about what you expected?
It's been both. It's been harder and easier. You know, it's harder. You can't prepare for around every corner there is a new issue. I had 2 of them today. I can't talk about them yet, but 2 potentially ugly issues today. And so when you turn that corner, you just don't know what's going to hit you in the face, so you can't really prepare for that. And so the last 4 hours I've been dealing with these issues when I was supposed to be doing some other things. So that has been, it's a little frustrating. It's not harder, it's frustrating in that. The best part of the job, though, is the kids are really cool. The Olympic sports in particular here, I say there are amazing, amazing athletes. You know, you've seen the banners around coming up on an Olympic year. We've had 400 Olympic athletes. No universities had more Olympic athletes or won more medals than USC has. If we were an individual country, we would have finished, we would be 12th in medal count all time in the Olympics. I mean, it's staggering, some of those things. Watching those kids, I knew nothing about water polo. I probably went to 20 water polo games last year. You know, watching how those kids train and how they prepare and how excellent they are at what they do. Those men and women who play water polo or men's tennis here who've won 3 straight national championships. It's really, really incredible to me. The surprising things about the job, number one, is the lack of student support. It's very few students go to events, including football games. Very few do. And then the number of mental health issues that we have in athletics, and I think in the general student population at USC as well. And it's not just USC, it's other universities as I talk to other athletic directors as well. Those caught me by surprise.
Mm-hmm. You may have answered the question, but I was going to ask, what aspect of USC athletics do you wish the public knew more about?
Well, I really do think, I wish they knew more about our cool men and women in the Olympic sports. I mean, they don't garner much attention, but they're phenomenal. Rebecca Soni is an example, one of our swimmers, the water polo team that's won 3 straight national championships. The tennis player, help me out. You remember Yak's last name? He graduated, but he was served in the in a European army, but he had to serve. He came here, incredible student athlete, top of the heap. He's going to law school now. Just some amazing stories. Greg Woodburn, who's on our track team, who started a nonprofit, sends 10,000 track shoes a year to Africa, to poor villages in Africa. I mean, kids who are really kind of changing the world. Those stories, we don't do a good enough job of getting out. Everybody wants to know a lot about football, and I get that. I understand that. But there's a lot of interesting young people in the athletic department.
Well, switching over to the higher profile side, and there's been so much written lately about what happened at Miami, just the latest in this, a real scandal-filled last year or so. Suspension starting actually this weekend at Miami, and already cries of the death penalty before we even have gotten far into the investigation. I'm wondering what your reaction was to the news about the situation at Miami. Have you heard from some of your fan base about it? And in your mind, does this case connect to USC in any way?
Well, that's a lot of questions, but I will say, yes, I have heard a lot from our fan base. Many of them very, very disappointed in me and others, that they think we're sitting on our hands and doing nothing. There is the connection. The fellow who was the athletic director at the University of Miami when all these things were going on was the chairman of the Committee of Infractions, who was the committee that handed down this penalty that our football and basketball teams are going through now, primarily football now. And so there was that nexus, which is a concern. And I guess I should tell our students here is, we have not been sitting on our hands, number one. I mean, for 5 years, before I took this job, I was on the board here at USC for 19 years. And when this whole NCAA thing first took place, when Reggie Bush things took off, I mean, we really investigated all our options, all the university's options, what we could do, could we or should we sue them, what are remedies, what does it mean even if you could sue? So we've looked at all those things and made the judgment, I think a good judgment, a reasoned judgment. It wasn't a rash judgment not to do those things. This particular thing in the Miami thing, and people saying, hey, Paul D. I mean, we're not idiots over in our department. I mean, we really aren't idiots. And we think of we know, we hear what you're saying. They don't, some of the internet crazies, not everybody is internet crazy, but I get a lot of internet crazies, and they don't really understand all the facts and what it is being a member of the NCAA. There is no due process, as an example. Everybody's saying, hey, sue them on due process. You can't do that. Paul D was one of 8 members on that committee. We've lost twice in the NCAA. We have no more room to appeal, even though we've raised that question again. So So I think the one frustrating thing for me that was the last few weeks is people thinking that A, I'm an idiot, B, that I'm doing nothing about this, and C, that we don't care about USC and the brand. We do it with all our heart and soul, and I think we've been very, very reasoned and done all we can do within the bounds and with the bounds of really good advice we've gotten.
In talking to a friend of mine, a USC supporter, happens to be a lawyer, he sort of expressed an opinion that I'm sure you almost addressed it there, but just that a lot of people on the message boards are sort of waiting for USC to speak out really strongly.
Yeah.
I don't know what could be gained necessarily by that. You said you've exhausted the appeal process,
yeah.
But I guess maybe it's the frustration of wanting to hear some kind of real emotional response. I'm guessing from this question that's what it meant.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, I played football here. I love USC. My kids went to school here. I mean, I met my wife here. I mean, I love USC as much as anybody does. I'd love to get up there and stand and scream and yell. It's not productive, number one. We're not, I mean, we've lost. We've lost twice with the NCAA. There's no more redress. Let's get over it and let's move on. And I say that people don't like to hear that, but the reason we aren't doing, we've already exhausted all the alternatives, and we've thought about all the other alternatives. We've really investigated all the alternatives. Maybe we should have gone out and explained this better, and maybe we should, just like I'm talking to our students here, what we've done. Maybe we've done a poor job of communication. But there are some things we can't say, too. There's some things we just cannot say just because of the negotiations and such we've had with the NCAA over the last few years.
And it seems like President Nikias and you are in sync on that issue of not.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to have a strong statement for the community, but he is the president. We've talked about it. We've agreed that this is he's made his statement last week, and that's it.
Are you concerned with the USC brand being tarnished through this process? My friend that I mentioned, the lawyer, gave me an example, and I thought probably everybody in this class has an example similar to this when maybe they go home. But he said he was in Boston over the weekend, and has two sons in law school there, and we're walking out of their hotel on Sunday night. The doorman said to my friend, "Should you even be able to wear that USC sweatshirt after what that school did?" My friend asked, what did we do? And he said, all the money they paid Reggie Bush to go there, all those gift bags for players, and you can't tell me Matt Leinart wasn't dirty. So
that's like the functional equivalent of an internet crazy.
Yeah. But I'm wondering, and Johnny, you mentioned this to me too this summer when you were working as an announcer up in Washington. People would see the USC stickers or something you were wearing, and immediately it seemed like maybe there were more misconceptions than truths coming out. And I'm wondering what your reaction is to that kind of thing.
And I really feel badly really for the academics at USC, and really for former President Steve Sample, who did such an incredible job of raising the academic profile of USC over the last 15 years or so. And in athletics, while it's just a teeny piece of the budget at USC, there's so much reputational risk in athletics, way outweighs the size of really of the budget at least. And so, yeah, and now we're getting cast in this thing with people from around the country, not so much here in Los Angeles, view us as the same as Miami and North Carolina and Ohio State, because when you see in the paper, USC is always mentioned now. All the things that are going wrong in college football, Miami, North Carolina, USC. I mean, this was 5 years ago. This has still been going on. And so once again, we get dragged back into that because of what's going on. This is one of the reasons we're trying to get this behind us, get it over with. We still have 2 3/4 year of probation ahead of us, and so it's still going to be a while. But ultimately, we'll have this in a rearview mirror, and we'll be done with it. In the meantime, I think we need to revel in what we have. We have some great athletes, some great student athletes. Some of them are here. Volleyball, basketball, football. I mean, we really do have, as I said, the world's best athletes, and we need to revel in their excellence.
What would you say concerns you most right now in college athletics? Moving forward, in light of some of the things that have happened, really top professionals in their field like Jim Tressel and Butch Davis have lost their jobs.
The biggest thing that bothers me is I don't think we're treating our student athletes fairly. I think we need to pay them more. when I say pay them more, our kids get stipend. How many student athletes are in the room here? Okay. And they get stipends once they move off campus their sophomore years. And we have kids who are literally hungry. I think we have just signed a TV contract that's going to pay Pac-12 universities on average $21 million a year starting next year. To me, it is, criminal is too hard a word. It is unconscionable that we aren't doing more for our students in allowing them to be able to at least eat. I mean, I have kids who are literally hungry at the end of the month. That's not right. And furthermore, it's a perception problem as we pay coaches and athletic directors and staff more and more and more. I mean, I think we've lost sight of these facts. I'm not saying we're going to pay guys $100,000 a year, men and women $100,000 a year, but we ought to have this formula, which is called cost of attendance. It's a formula that they base stipends on. Right now, stipends are based on room, board, tuition, and fees. But if you add, cell phone, travel to and from home, laundry, and the other things, it adds up to about another $3,000 to $3,300 a year per student athlete, or per scholarship, I should say here, because not all of our athletes have full scholarships. So they get another $275 a month, roughly. Is that going to change your life? No, but will I have guys worry about getting hungry? Hopefully not. So to me, that's a big issue for me. There's also this, really academic reform that's going on in the NCAA. I think we need to be attuned to that. There's perceptions out there that, kids aren't going to class. Teachers are writing papers for them. All things we know aren't happening. So I think we need to prove that our student athletes are truly students as well as athletes, and we have those here at USC. So we've got to do a better job, I think, of promoting our young people.
Would you say that the stipend should be increased across the board for all student athletes,
yes,
not just in the revenue producing?
Yes, and absolutely, and we can afford to do that. Okay, we can afford now. We get pushback. You get pushback because if I can do this unilaterally, I would. I cannot do this. If our conference or the other athletic directors of the Pac-12, they would like to. We can't do it unilaterally. It has to come out from the NCAA, and the problem is you have and have-nots, and for some schools, they can't afford it, so they vote no. But that's not right either. I mean, if we can afford to do it, we ought to be able to do it for our student athletes because it's the right thing to do, number one. And number two, it's a horrible perception problem you're going to have as the revenue model keeps increasing that you were just talking about. By the way, the costs go way up too. Sure. But we ought to, I think we ought to just treat our kids more fairly.
Would that speak in favor of super conferences, to have schools that are all kind of on the same plane in the same conference, rather than some conferences where you might have the mid-major schools in there?
Yeah, right. It does, and so we shouldn't be penalized because we can't afford to do things, and we've created this environment at USC over 125 years of athletics, right? So if we are able to do that, others are. We shouldn't penalize our kids because some smaller mid-majors cannot. So I think there's a move. It's not going to happen this year, next year, but it wouldn't be surprised. It's on the horizon. I think we'll ultimately get there.
I'm glad you mentioned the stipend issue because I've discussed it in this class over the years, and I had a student athlete 2 years ago in here, a football player, is not here now, but he mentioned to me, it was pretty shocking to hear, but he mentioned to me that he had known a teammate or two, and he didn't name names, didn't ask for them, but that had sold drugs to make ends meet to get through the end of the month. And he didn't mention it might have been pills. I don't know what exactly it was, but he was talking especially about athletes from out of state. Yeah. Because he said, "Look, I'm from nearby here. I can get home, but he goes, I got $20 to get me through about 10 more days. I think it was like 10 days to the end of the month. And I got 20, and I think I'll be able to make it. I mean, that's
it's perverse. I've talked to maybe some of these guys in this room. This summer when I was around some guys, mostly football players, some basketball players would be coming by, and I'd say, pull them into my office and say, hey, let's go through your bills. Okay, here's your stipend. You get $1,150 a month, or some number like that. Rent is $800 to $900 a month for something that's not terribly fantastic. Okay, so you got $250 a month. You pay your cell phone bill. You pay some internet service, and after you do it, you get $120 a month. Divide by 30. It's less than $5 a day for food because we don't feed them all year round. So again, to me, it's just not right. And a lot of our athletes need a lot more calories than you and I do. And so it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't seem right. It isn't right.
Mm-hmm. And are there differences in the stipends at schools depending on the location? Being here in an urban environment in Los Angeles, housing is more expensive off campus than it is in...
Yes. It's really set by your financial aid office, you're right. So the housing here, it's based off of a formula here on our housing. And actually, last year I battled and we changed the formula for our own housing a little bit that should have gotten another $82 a month in our stipend for our kids this year. Have you guys all seen that? Have you been seeing that yet? Yes, no? Okay. Some of the circumstances are a little bit different, but on average, it should be about $82 more a month, I thought, starting in August. But in any event, but if you go to this cost of attendance, this is another reason people vote down to cost of attendance, right? USC, it's more expensive here for these other things, laundry, whatever, right? Transportation to and from home. And so where at USC, it might be $3,300 a year at, to pick a school. Washington State, it's $1,500. And so they say, wait a minute, now USC has a recruiting advantage because you're going to pay your athletes $3,300 more, and you're only $1,500 there. And so, those are the battles we fight.
Yeah. Number of people I've spoken to when they talk about fixes in the NCAA system, the enforcement structure, my lawyer friend was saying that he doesn't think individuals that do the judging should be laymen from other schools.
I agree.
That they should be retired judges, for example.
100%.
And they might have an axe to grind as a member of a rival
Makes perfect
school.
sense to me. I mean, it's very well, and they do that in the legal system. You have arbitrators, that retired judges who fulfill that same function. It's that same model. I entirely agree with you.
The other thing he said is that the NCAA shouldn't adjudicate each case independently. That there should be precedent used, which is a pillar of the criminal justice system. And right now we hear that the NCAA says you can't treat all the cases the same, or you can't apply precedent. Each case is different. We're sort of trained to think that way. Well, the Miami case is a lot different than USC. The Ohio State case is a lot different. And just from a legal standpoint, should precedent be used when you're deciding these cases?
We believe, these aren't legal proceedings, number one, but we believe that. As a matter of fact, in our appeal, which we had in January, was the basis of our appeal. We said, hey, here's what happened in XYZ school in 1995, and here was the infraction, here was the penalty. We did that 4 or 5 cases, and we felt the cases that went before us, there was much more egregious behavior, and yet the penalties were less. That's basically what we're hanging our hat on, right? And you're right. They say, nope, you can't do that. You can't. And if you, in an appeal process, if you have to prove an abuse of discretion by the infractions committee, how do you prove abuse of discretion if you can't use past precedent? I can't quite. I don't know how you can do that. So that's why only 1 of 12 appeals have won over the last number of years since they kind of changed the process.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that President Emmert, the new NCAA president, mentioned...
Who's coming to campus, by the way.
Right. We mentioned that last week in November. He'll be here. One of the things he mentioned was an increase in the in the GPAs coming out of high school or junior college. That was one of the things he was in favor of. I wonder, he also mentioned graduation rates, that the whole APR system, increasing the penalties for schools that didn't have graduation rates at a certain level. I'm wondering, what is your thought about the willingness of a school to bend to admit talented athletes in the same way that the school might bend to admit a talented musician or an artist? Do you believe that there's room? Are you willing? And
well, we've all done it. We've done it for 100 years here, and done it everywhere. Just virtually every program does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have no problem with them. I mean, they bring a skill set that is valued by the university, that is enjoyed by the university in many, many ways. So. And it gives kids access to universities that may not have had that access otherwise. So we do it here. I'm proud to say we do it here. These kids succeed in incredible rates. You know, we graduate 78% of our student athletes. We're going to push that number. General student population graduates 90% of our kids. Our all student athlete GPA last semester was 2.88. General student population is 3.4. We can close that gap. We will. But you know, we're pretty proud of what we do. Basketball graduated 100% of its seniors last year. This last football team had 19 seniors. We've graduated 15 of those 19 right now, 79%. 2 more we're hoping to graduate this semester, which get us at 85, 86% territory. And I think last year we had a very, very successful year with our graduation rate. So what was the question again? Anyway, you get it. We're not, you know, we say bring on the rising. Our student athletes can do this. We have kids that compete in the pools and the courts and the fields against anybody, and they can do it in the classrooms. If you want to raise the rates, terrific. Am I embarrassed that we admit people that perhaps wouldn't have gotten here just purely on SAT scores? Absolutely not. Every school in America does that, maybe except for the Ivies.
I wonder sometimes.
Actually, the Ivies do it too.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes if much has changed from the time that you were here playing football to now, especially football and basketball that have maybe an eye on professional career.
Yeah.
It seems like coaches are being hired in college now with more of an eye towards, do they have a background of coaching in the pros? It's easier to recruit kids when you're talking to them. I have experience coaching. Do you find that there is much difference, the student athletes you talk to today, about what their goals are versus the guys that you play with? And the reason I ask that is I just heard a highly recruited basketball player, a senior, mention in an interview this week that he was already talking about, you know, like doing a one and done or doing a two and done, which really means he starts school with 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, was it that way also?
Oh, no,
when you were...
no, it wasn't. First of all, you know, the athletes were at USC are much more skilled than I was, or most of the teams were here, so it's different. And their lives are different. They start training for these sports when they're 6 or 7, 8, right or wrong. They get specialized. They specialize. You know, we didn't do those things. You know, it wasn't all consuming here. I mean, how many football players do we have in here? Do we have a few of them? Literally, I did not lift one weight in 4 years. I'm not even sure we had a weight room. But we won 2 national championships. And so you had summer jobs. I mean, I found a letter from Coach John McKay from 1964. These football players should see it. It was incredible. In 1964, this is before I was here, but 64, Coach McKay, head football coach, sent a letter to his football team to have them prepare for the upcoming season. The letter was sent July 7th. Okay, it's midsummer before you get what your workout plan is. Okay, and it says, you know, dear Pat, you know, football season's coming up. You're going to report in training camp August 15th. Here's what I'd like you to do to get ready for the next season: 15 jumping jacks a day, 10 sit-ups, play some touch football. I mean, literally. So it was so much different then. We weren't thinking about the NFL. You know. It just, I think money has changed it a lot. There's, you know, they pay a lot more in professional sports today than they did in those days. But just the whole environment, when you started at 6 and 7, we never specialized in anything in those days. That's how old I am. So it's much different landscape.
Yeah. About a year ago at this time, I heard you doing a preseason football season interview. And it was I thought, a really good question. And I don't know if it took you by surprise.
How about the answer? Was the answer good?
The answer was pretty good.
No, good.
I've added that too. I've said that too. And the question was, a year before the first game, would you have hired Lane Kiffin to be your coach if you had been the athletic director at the time he was hired? And I, split second, I thought, how is he going to answer that question?
How did I answer it?
I'm going to tell you what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. You said that he would have been on the list of people that you would have talked to.
That's a good answer. Very, very political.
Did that question take you by surprise?
It did take me by surprise. Yeah, it did take me by surprise. Because most questions I've been asked multiple times. But that was good. By the way, that's a good interviewing technique for those of you who are interviewing people, making sure you get better answers to better questions you ask, like you asked, Jeff. You asked great questions. But it did catch me by surprise. The past year I've spent with Lane Kiffin, and these guys live with him more than I do. I think the perception and the reality are two different things, at least in the outside world, or certainly in the state of Tennessee, who think he's a rogue, who who think he just wild man who doesn't pay attention to the rules and things. That's not what I have experienced here, because I mean he knows if he knowingly breaks the NCAA rules, he's fired. I mean, he knows that. This is his dream job, and so I think he's done a lot of things well. He's got some great kids here that he convinces to come to USC because it's a great institution and it's a great pathway to the pros, and we're not afraid to say that. We want our kids all to be #1 draft picks. We want them to graduate too, and you can do both of those things here. And that's one of the things that we're not afraid to say. Mm-hmm. And he's done a lot of things right, but is a long hill to climb here through this next 3 years with probation. And it's a terrible profession, this coaching. At the end of the day, and all coaches know it, at the end of the day, no matter how many guys you graduate, if you're a good citizen or not, you must win at some point at a place like USC.
I got the sense during the course of the year, by the end of the year, you were, I won't say necessarily surprised, but you felt good about what he had done.
Yes.
and how he had
I feel much better about
Lane.
Having been around him now for the last 13, 14 months, whatever it's been, I feel much, much better about him. And I think he has a chance of being a really good coach here for a long time.
It's a pretty young age to be handed the keys to.
36 years old. He's moved 17 times. His wife is similar age. She's moved 23 times. She was the daughter of a coach.
Right.
You don't stay. It's not a sticky job. We hope he stays here a long time, though.
Yep. Questions? Anybody want? Go ahead and step up to the mic so we can make sure we get it.
Mic night. Open
recorded.
mic night.
Yeah. Kevin, alum of this class. I get former students coming back to sit in sometimes. Hello. Are the mics? Are we set on the mics? Can you flip? Is there a switch you can just flip there, Kevin? Well, go ahead.
I can see. My question is pretty much having to do with the Coliseum and right now with the Coliseum Commission. First of all, how much does the athletic department play a role in negotiating with the Coliseum Commission and particularly one councilman? And how does that affect USC football with potentially an NFL team coming in to play temporarily in the Coliseum?
Right. Did you all hear the question? Could you all hear it? The athletic department isn't directly involved in these negotiations. We are involved and asked our advice. We have a whole separate real estate department that is really negotiating with the Coliseum Commission those as well. So I'm very familiar with what's going on, but I'm not at the bargaining table, if you will. With regard to an NFL team potentially coming in here playing for 3 or 4 years, if they were to build the downtown stadium or anywhere, any other stadium here, a team would have to. You don't want to be a lame duck in a city, right? So a team would announce that they would come to Los Angeles and leave immediately, because and then they have to play in a temporary facility until their stadium was built. So the two alternatives are the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum. If professional football comes to Los Angeles, and my first choice would be, quite honestly, that it doesn't, selfishly for USC. But if it were to come to Los Angeles, I'd really want them to play in the Coliseum, because they're going to have to spend some money in renovations that then I don't, or we don't, in athletics, right? So if we ultimately control the Coliseum, we're going to have to renovate the space, and I don't know what that number is, but I'm sure it's a big number. And having a team here would help pay for those renovations. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Who else? Can you just, all right. Okay.
You mentioned you were on the board during the Reggie Bush allegations. What did you learn from watching Mike Garrett's response to those allegations and eventually sanctions?
Well, I think a lot of it was driven by, really some of it was driven by the board. I mean, we were going to take this kind of tact, but what I did learn is we in the athletic department didn't have a good relationship with the NCAA. And love them or hate them, you gotta deal with them. They're our governing body. I have been back to the NCAA 3 times in the last year. I'm going again shortly. So I can call those guys. I can call Mark Emmert. I can call Jim Ish, who's the #2 guy. We can call Julie Rowe-Lash, who's the enforcement person, and try to protect USC a little bit earlier. Now, A lot of people don't know that. Again, if you read these chat boards and internet boards, they think we are sitting on our hands. We're not doing anything. It's not true. I can assure you of that. But we are trying to build a relationship with them because we're going to have more issues going forward. I'm not naive enough to think that we're not going to have NCAA issues going forward. We're going to have some. So I want to be able to say, hey, listen, we just discovered this. I want to call them, self-report if I have to immediately. And I think that kind of relationship helps you at the penalty stage. I know it helps you at the penalty stage. So I think that's the lesson I learned from being on the board. And now, as an athletic director, having gone through our appeal hearing and what's gone on at University of Miami and Paul D, and the relationship I've built over the last year. So I think we just need to continue to build that relationship. But voicing our opinion, too. It's not like we're acquiescing. We don't agree with them all the time. I mean, we don't. I mean, we've told them that. And we've had problems with Paul D, and we've told them that. So, in any event, we're on a path to have a much better place with them, I think, going forward.
Mm-hmm. Questions? If you're in the middle, you can stay there, but otherwise, if you can use the mics, it just helps as we're recording this. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about athletes and social media. I know that every player and every athlete has the right to be able to be on Facebook, on Twitter, but do y'all give any kind of training to your student athletes? Or maybe that already happened?
I didn't plant that question.
How do you work with your athletes to make sure they're staying appropriate and they are representing the university well?
Great question, and you heard the question. Actually, Jeff came in and spoke to our coaches, and were any athletes in it, or was it just coaches?
It was the football team.
Football team. Football team. I think some of our other coaches were in there too. And they recorded it. A bunch of our coaches looked at the DVD basically on this, and you can tell them what you told our team. But we are always talking to them about that. We are always, our coaches are monitoring what's being out there. Did you see that there was a article about the 50 lessons about what you shouldn't be doing on Twitter for student athletes? Have you seen that?
I saw another article just they're coming out almost every day. I haven't seen that
well,
one.
Anyway, I thought it was some pretty good advice. So, my own personal message, I'm not on Facebook. I don't tweet, but our department athletics, our kids do. We need to do that, and we do. I don't. But my message, and all of our athletes have heard this, there is no such thing as a private moment. Unfortunately today, you think there is a private moment, but there is not. One of our athletes, TMZ, got him big time, okay? And do you want your picture bare-chested out there? Is that the image you want of everybody when they think of you? And I've seen some of those pictures of our student athletes. So, at the end of the day, you're grown adults. You make those decisions yourselves. You don't have some experience, and sometimes you don't want to hear from old folks like us, but we have these life experiences where I have made a zillion mistakes in my life, and I'm trying to teach our kids you can't do that because you live in a different era where everybody's got a cell phone camera, and when you think you're alone, you're not.
Yeah, that's the message.
What did you tell her?
I talked a lot about the risk-reward quotient that I think about when you make a big decision in life, that you have to quickly decide there's risk involved, there's a reward. And in this case, the risk so overshadows any reward, voicing your opinion. And the guys that were in our discussion heard about the Pittsburgh Steelers running back, Rashard Mendenhall, who got his opinion out on Twitter about the when bin Laden was killed, and he had feelings about that and about some aspects of 9/11 that he was questioning, and a 4-year deal, an extension of a endorsement deal with Champion Apparel was taken off the table. And the point I made was that he has the right to his opinion as an American, and Champion had a right to its opinion as a company as well. They pulled the deal off the table. Yeah. So on a risk-reward thing there, I don't know if the reward was really equal.
I think all these electronics should have that "do not send" button. Do not send. That you can hit that one. Yeah, I just try to live my life by one rule: just don't do anything that would embarrass my mother. Now, my mother's passed away, but for me, it's pretty simple. If my mom would be embarrassed at that, I just won't do it.
Well, I mentioned almost those same words. I said, if it's something that you wouldn't say to your mother or your coach, then you probably shouldn't put it out there for the public to see. But it's a medium that's new, and we're just, finding out about these things. TMZ wasn't around, even 10 years ago. So that's part of what I call now new media, and it's just the awareness thing. It's an ongoing thing. The rules are being figured out along the way, and their price is heavy to pay. Yeah.
What life experience would you say best prepared you for the role that you have now?
What life experience? I just think it is life experience. I couldn't have done this job at 35, I don't think, as well as I have. I mean, I'm 58 now. I took a job when I was 57 years old. I had 57 years of life experiences, a lot of them in athletics, a lot of them around athletes. I had dealt with, in my prior life, I was in the private equity business, so I dealt with a lot of prima donna CEOs. Been around a lot of very, very successful people. And I think advising companies, such as I did my old job, I think they kind of prepared me for some of this right here. So even though it was a new career for me, I really felt prepared. And I also feel, if I fail, if I'm not doing the right job, they'll fire me and find a really good athletic director for USC, and I'll go back to my old job. But I hope that didn't happen for a while. But if you're looking for kind of one life experience, it's a good question. I think being a good listener is an underrated talent. I know so many people that when they're not talking, they're waiting to talk. They can't wait to talk again, and they miss the moment. And so I try to, my whole professional life of the last 25, 30 years, I've really tried to listen to people and understand their point of view, even though a lot of times I don't agree with it. So if I had to say one thing, that would probably be it. That prepared me for this job.
I have a lot of students, current and former, that are getting the opportunities to study abroad. I really encourage it. Talk about, being well-rounded. I think it's great for a resume, for a future employer to know that you have experiences that are life experiences. So I wonder, with that in mind, it wasn't quite as encouraged. I don't remember as much when we were in school, but you obviously had an incredible experience being able to study in Oxford. So you come from playing football here, and then going over and being there with some of the best and brightest in the world. What was that experience like?
It was phenomenal. It changed my life in so many ways. I got this Rhodes Scholarship really because a professor, I was an English literature major here, my senior year, would not let me out of his room until I filled out an application. Otherwise, I never would have even known about it. So Alan Kasdan was, no, not Alan Kasdan, Kasson was the professor, chairman of the English literature department, and he was the guy that kind of set me on this path, which I didn't know I was going down. So for me, it was incredible. I lived in Europe and traveled all over all of Europe, including Eastern Europe. I had African friends, German friends, Swedish friends, English friends, Scottish friends, something I would have never had here. I didn't ever have to talk about football, which was great. And I really had my cake and ate it too, because I was able to work out, I stretched a 2-year Rhodes Scholarship program over 3 years. I played for the Rams for 6 months, and then we'd lose in the playoffs, and I'd go to Oxford for 6 months. And so I did that for 3 years. And it was, and the Oxford educational system is very, very unique, is that you're on a tutorial. There's 3 trimesters. Each trimester you'd have basically 2 classes, but you met with your tutor, your one-on-one each week, and you would have written an essay, 10-page essay about a specific topic. I studied philosophy, economics, and politics. And so one trimester I might have to take economics and philosophy. And so I would meet with my economics tutor, read him you walk in, you have to wear the full academic gown. When you walked in, motorboard. You walk in, he's got a fire going in his place. It gives you a glass of sherry, and you're drinking the sherry as you're reading your essay. But then you actually kind of have to debate that the premise of your paper with this very learned person by yourself. I mean, you had to show up. Couldn't hide in the back of the class. So it was, but really things really slowed down for me for the first time. I really had a chance to really think and reflect. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful time.
That's great. I will write that letter of recommendation for you, Lane. for studying abroad, by the way.
Great. Yeah, I just wrote actually we have 2 kids in our athletic department applying for Rhodes scholarships. Wrote letters of recommendation for them.
Well, great. Questions? Yeah.
Like PPE was one of the hardest majors in Oxford. I just read that. And how did you kind of combine like the sports with the academics?
There. Politics, philosophy, politics, and economics there was a popular major for American Rhodes scholars who would really use it as a way station on to graduate school. And that's kind of what I did. I came back and went to law school. In those days when I went over there, unlike today, you couldn't do that today. I kind of shut down my athletics thing. You know, I just went over there and basically I was a student for 6 months. And I rarely trained. I threw a ball around a little bit, some ran some, but mostly I was in the pubs at night. So you know, so again, it's a different time. This is 35 years ago. You really couldn't do that today. But you know, and then I just came back and trained, and so I had really 2 lives. I had a student life and I had an athletic life, and very, very distinct and different from one another, and they're both enjoyable in their own way.
What else? Yep.
What are you hoping to accomplish by going back to NCAA's in Charlotte?
Just you know, we want to have just continue the dialogue. You know, nothing specific really. The idea is just to continue this dialogue. You know, this will not be the last time I go back. You know, I'll go back again. I'm going to meet with Mark Emmert when he comes out here. I just think it's one of the things. They are the governing body. You ought to show your face there. I'd like to get them out here a little bit more too. It's one of the things I've told them is I think you need to get out of Indianapolis some and see what we have to live with on a day-to-day basis on a campus that is in a big city, screaming with agents and runners. Some of them are students. See how the rules that come down from the mountaintop. They're hard to implement. You need to understand how hard they are to implement. So we're trying to get them here as well. So this is kind of a series of times I'll be going back.
You mentioned agents, and you made a point of having a summit to discuss that issue of agents and on campus last year. I thought that was really a smart move to just get that subject out and dialogue going. Sometimes I think that we demonize agents like, you know, all agents are evil, or we go a little bit too far sometimes. I'm wondering kind of what your
there's plenty of good agents. There's plenty of really respectable
that play
people.
By the rules.
Play by the rules. They do their clients well. Smart men and women. You know, we have no qualms with those people whatsoever. We even recommend. Our juniors are allowed to talk to those people. We recommend they talk to them. It's the other kind, the underside of that, if you will, that aren't quality people and are willing to break the rules, and they don't care the consequences for kids who come 10 years after that kid. That's what I feel badly for our kids, our juniors and seniors in particular, who did nothing wrong here, and yet they're suffering the consequences when the real culprits aren't.
Other questions? Yep. Yeah, just come up here.
I was wondering if the McKay Center was going to put our facilities in line with some schools like Oregon or Oklahoma State, and if not, then are there any other plans in the near future to keep elevating the facilities?
Yes, I think it's a constant. This is one of the problems with athletics in today's business model of athletics is increasing demand for facilities and salaries, and this is why you have to sign these television contracts to make it work. As to the John McKay Center, which will open next August, we believe it will be a premier, the best, until someone builds the next one, which will be better, I'm sure, facility. We haven't really built. We built Galen, which is a terrific environment, but Heritage Hall across the way here, where I house, that was built in '72. It's a dump, basically, and so the John McKay Center is going to be absolute first class. It's really going to wow you. I think it's going to be functional for all 21 of our sports. All 21 of our sports will have academic services there. They'll train there. They'll have weight rooms there, health things, nutrition program there as well. And then after that, we're going to remodel, if you will, or refurbish Heritage Hall would be the next thing. And then over time, I think in our budget, we have to have a little capital expenditure budget, which we haven't had here, to kind of make sure we don't let these other facilities fall into disrepair. Dado Field, the tennis courts, the swim stadium, which we got to do some things there as well. So we have a lot of facilities. It's a lot of upkeep, and we have to figure out ways to be able to fund those things. Mm-hmm. To answer your question, I think our facilities will be as good as anybody in the country once we finish the John McKay Center and then remodel Heritage Hall.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's such an emphasis sometimes, overly so, on, I call it the arms race, that you got to compete with the fact that Oregon's got a zillion flat screen TVs in locker rooms. Like, that's a deciding factor when you're picking a school.
Well, it is for kids. Ask some of these kids. Some of these kids visited Oregon, and I'm sure it's impressive. We have other attributes. Think about it. What we're able to do with our athletes, including football, with poor facilities. When we get this thing finished and have as good a facility as anybody, that was the only thing that's really been lacking around here for 20 years. Mm-hmm. We've got a great academic institution that wasn't here 30 years ago either, right? Right. So we've got an incredible academic enterprise to market, if you will. Great facilities, great student body, great location, fantastic weather. Right. You want to go to Oregon and get rained on every day?
Yep, in the back.
With the new ESPN Fox deal for the media coverage, do you think it's more beneficial for USC to take the $2 million bonus if the deal goes below $170,000 or
170 million?
Yeah. Or do you think it would be beneficial for us to pursue a private network? Yeah.
Well, the ship has already sailed on the first question. We are past the $170 million threshold annually. Okay, so USC and UCLA will not get a premium. We are this year. This is the last year we do. We get premium. The more we're on TV, and USC is generally on TV more than most schools, the more you get. Okay, so we generally have gotten about $2 million more a year, SC and UCLA, than the other conference schools through TV. Next year, the original negotiation was we were going to keep that $2 million premium unless they were able to negotiate a contract that averaged $170 million a year. Okay, it's way past its average, I think, $225. So we're going to equally split. Some people are upset with me about that too, because $21 million goes further in Washington State than it does here. I get it, but we're part of a conference. It's still very, very good for us as well. Much, much better than we really thought we were going to get. Mm-hmm. Did I answer your question? Okay.
With such a passionate connection to our university, can you comment on what it was like to, in a non-biased fashion, called games such as the 05 Bush Push game and other close USC Notre Dame games?
I hated calling Notre Dame SC games. It was really awful for me. And
the backstory there is it's your mom.
My mom really wanted me to go to Notre Dame. Yeah, she really wanted me to go to Notre Dame. I grew up an Irish Catholic, and followed Notre Dame as a kid and such. But it was I broadcast probably 12 USC Notre Dame games over the years, but there were a couple of epic ones, and probably the most epic was the 2005 one, the Bush Push game. I was cheering so much in the booth, I didn't even say push. And I really cheered during commercials. During commercials, I was the biggest USC fan. But as a national broadcaster, you really have to play at level. And I was probably, as a broadcaster, tougher on USC than I was on other schools, because I didn't want even the appearance of being biased. But that game, I also broadcast way back in 1984, the Doug Flutie game. I don't know if you've probably seen that in highlights now. The Doug Flutie, Boston College versus Miami game, which was incredible. Those two games were just amazing. Did another one where Notre Dame beat SC in a last-minute field goal here in the Coliseum. But I've always had great respect for Notre Dame, even over the last. Even though I chose to come here, Notre Dame is a great model in a lot of ways. They do a lot of things right. They do a lot of things right athletically. So I'm not afraid to say, hey, there's some other models out there that I'm trying to pull from to do things better around here. We should be constantly improving our athletic department, and we can learn from those schools. So While it was odd broadcasting Notre Dame games in some ways, I had such great respect for them in kind of how they carried themselves as a university and athletic department. It was really a learning experience for me. And it helped me here. I mean, I actually learned a lot there. Let me ask our athletes. One of the things Notre Dame does, which I think is really cool, is they do not let their athletes room with other athletes. I think that's great. I don't think that might work here. How would that? Would anybody care to comment? Would that work for you? If you came in your freshman year and rather were living with another football player, you were living with, a foreign exchange student from China, or a kid from Wisconsin who played piano. Trying to get this real college. But this is the trail balloon. Mm-hmm. This is a classic trail balloon.
Why wouldn't it work? I mean, go ahead, weigh in.
I don't think it would have worked. We're on the swim team. We room together, and it's better if you're on the same schedules because we were waking up at 5.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
If you have like some kid who's coming in at 2:30 a.m.
I hear that. I hear that, and that's probably where you end up. Excuse me.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that issue? Yeah.
I'm not an athlete, but I would imagine that it's pretty different living in South Bend and living in Los Angeles. Just like the lifestyle and opportunities that you have. To have someone who's on more of your same schedule here would be much more beneficial, I think, than in South Bend, where even if they're on a different schedule, there's not as much going on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point as well. Indeed, there is not as much going on in South Bend. I've spent many, many nights in South Bend. So yeah, I think it's just kind of one of those things. I'm just trying to think about how we get our student athletes. Are you getting the things I'm putting in your locker? We're putting in your locker about the schedules of all the events. Just raise your hand. Are you getting those in your lockers? Are you going to any of them? Am I wasting my time? Well, I mean, no. It's okay. It's okay. We're going to fail at a lot of things. I don't mind failing. And actually, last year I got some good feedback from female athletes in particular who seemed they were going to some Vision Voices things and some lectures, etc. But as I said, they're so consumed by what they do athletically, and then add that on trying to graduate from a premier university where the kids sitting next to you are pretty smart. I get it. There's not a lot of free time. I'm trying to get you to go from here to here a little bit.
That's one of the reasons I always try to push studying abroad, because you get so caught up in your life here that you just lose perspective. Like it's okay. You can take a semester and go away and things, and you come back. It's going to be here. It's going to be one semester out of your life, but it's a life-changing experience. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what you're suggesting is, on a different scale, like you can do these things. I was a couple years ago now on a Tuesday night, and I looked up and I saw Ted Turner was going to be at Bovard, some series. Like, why wouldn't I want to go walk a few steps and see Ted Turner? Tom Friedman in the New York Times, same deal. And I thought, God, that's so cool that people like that.
Does anyone know who Tom Friedman is? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Tom was actually at Oxford with me. Very, very interesting guy. He still is an incredibly interesting guy, actually.
Yeah, really good stuff. He writes in the New York Times. But I love the idea of the speaker series. If you see just announcements that somebody's going to be on campus. I mentioned you guys, I'm hoping that Mark Cuban will come into class this semester. I think we're close, and if that happens, we might have to move the class that night to Bovard, I think, with people that might be interested in hearing him. But I think there's so many opportunities.
This is the only chance you'll have to do it in your life, I promise you. It's the only chance you'll have. You'll after you graduate, you're going to get busier, a lot busier.
Yeah. Johnny.
Yeah, Mr. Haden, you've spoken very highly about your Rhodes Scholar experience. A couple of years ago, Myron Roll was actually discouraged by some in the sports industry from taking his Rhodes Scholarship. Do you think that people in the sports industry have lost sight of the importance of academics and being well-rounded?
The question was, Myron Roll, who was a football player at Florida State, was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship just a few years ago. He was a great football player, and there were people in the athletic world who were discouraging him from, taking that experience. I was trying to talk. The Rams tried to talk me out of doing it too. Again, that was a long time ago, but the Rams really tried to have me stay home. And I would have quit football if I had to, because I knew at that point, even though I didn't know much about going in, that I had learned so much after I had gotten it about it that it was going to be a life-changing experience. Yeah. The athletic world is really myopic, and it's all about the next game or the next practice or whatever, and people get in that mindset. I mean, there's a lot of tomorrows after the last game that you got to prepare for, and I think a Rhodes Scholarship or any international experience helps you prepare.
Mm-hmm. So the university just announced this week that we are in the midst of our largest capital campaign ever, and we're trying to raise $6 billion. How do you see that money transferring into the athletics department, if at all?
Yes, the campaign, the new campaign is going to be $6 billion. We are assigned a number. Every department is assigned a number. I think we're assigned to raise $300 million. We will get that done. We will do that. And not only because it's our number as we need to, but we have a very good plan of doing it. And it allows us to continue to provide great facilities for our kids, hopefully a good experience for our student athletes and our fans at the respective venues and such. But each department around the university is kind of assigned one. But while I'm thinking about it, how many of you have seen the new app we have for game day? What do you think? Good? Well, I mean, the real test is Saturday, I guess, huh? But load it. The app. Do you have the app? It's at the App Store. It's what is it? The USC Trojans. It comes up, yeah, and it's called Game Day. But we're really excited. The one bottleneck we may have is the connectivity, the wireless power and such at the Coliseum with 90,000 people. It might be difficult to get the live stats, but we have this new video board where we're trying to get you live stats. But we're hoping, we're really trying to push the envelope in a lot of ways in the athletic department. We believe this app is the best college app at this time for this game day experience. And it's going to talk to you about traffic, emergency situations. You getting it up there?
Well, we had that release that you had sent out this week.
But anyway, I would encourage you, those of you who have not downloaded it. How many of you are going to the game Saturday? How many will you go to the fourth game? Okay. I said I was surprised. We have 30,000 students, graduate and undergraduate, and we have about, on average, 7,500 students go to football games. We had the #1 rated men's volleyball team last year. They were awesome. We had an average of, I think I saw Steve, 500 people a game. Yeah. The world's best volleyball players. Basketball, certainly the freshmen can walk right across the street to Galen and see that. By the way, we're going to give free pizzas away this year, so come to basketball. We found out if you give students something free, they will come.
Yeah.
Well, we have a great pizza program for basketball.
And then the women's, the USC-UCLA women's volleyball game coming up this week from
next Friday. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, we got some special. Well, you come out and see us. I mean, our girls' teams are just awesome, just awesome.
So that wasn't a question I wanted to ask you guys too. When Pat mentioned about student attendance not being what it should, it's something that
well, not being what it, I'm not saying what it should. It just, for whatever reason, kids choose not to come, and I'm saying it should be greater. It just surprises me that more don't come.
It surprises me too. I remember going to a basketball game a couple of years ago. It was right after Galen opened. And there was a football game that night at 5 o'clock, and a basketball game was scheduled at noon. I thought, well, that's perfect. People will go to the game, they'll walk across, have plenty of time to tailgate, football game at 5 o'clock. I could have counted the students. In fact, I think I did. I counted like 16 students or something. That it was against St. Mary's. I mean, not a huge, big-name opponent, but a good one, competitive game. And it just struck me then that you just can't get people to, divert from their habit of tailgate, the game day habit, even with the Galen Center being across the street basically from the tailgating area. And I thought, you know what, I'm not sure if you put the basketball game on the Coliseum floor that people would leave the picnics to come into the stadium early to watch the basketball game. So I just wonder.
We're going to start getting pretty good in basketball. I really believe now we lost Gio Fontaine, our point guard. That'll really hurt. But over the next few years, I really think we're going to start getting good in basketball. But we want to create a pit. We
Right.
want a 6 or 8 point home court advantage. I went to a Duke, North Carolina game at Cameron a few years ago. Man, it's got to be worth 8 points to Duke. And we have to win to get you there. I know that, and I think we're going to. But man, it would be great to have that environment in basketball that we don't quite have, even though we have an incredible facility.
Yeah.
Yes, Sophie.
Lane.
But like we talked about last semester, is that like in big games, like there's a women's versus UCLA, but it was on Super Bowl Sunday or something like that.
That was bad scheduling.
Yeah, so I think like scheduling and stuff like that
Yes.
it's harder. You can't
Yep.
be competing with something like
No,
football,
you're
where
right.
You define athletics sometimes by USC football. That's what gets everyone excited at the beginning of the year. You have to keep them excited so that it goes throughout
Yeah.
with the rest of the year.
No, yeah, that particular game was horrible schedule. Now, again, I don't schedule. That's not my responsibility. But boy, yeah, that was bad. We had a lot more UCLA people than we had SC people.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that most of the students are so consumed in the academic way
Yeah.
that they don't venture out
Yeah.
or really pay attention to the sports.
Yep.
Because at least personally for me, like last semester was like so much work
Yep.
that I just only made it to one basketball game.
Yep,
And
I get it. Yeah, that's a perfectly valid answer. You guys are all good students. It's a lot more work than it was 25 years ago here to be a student. I get it. But take a study break. Come out and watch volleyball. Come out. The nice thing about volleyball to me is you walk over to Galen. It's Steve. How long's the game? Maybe an hour. I mean, you're walking the incredible athletes. If our girls team, we have a libero, a defensive player called Natalie Haglund. You know Natalie, and if you just came out and watched her play, if you watched Natalie play and watch how much fun she's having and the passion and the enjoyment that she's having, and if you can't enjoy the game just watching her have fun, check your pulse. I mean, there's something wrong with you. I mean. And so to me, when I go see those athletes, again, the premier ones, Steve's another one, and watching how much fun they're having doing something that they love so much, you love it right back. Love them for it. So anyway, I would encourage you to come out to some other sports.
Yeah, I have a question. I got an email about USC this is their first year doing friends and family tickets for football games.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just to get more students out?
Mm-hmm. I can't remember. I think it's for $20 you can bring a friend.
Yeah, it's like $30.
$30, okay.
Do they just sit in the student section?
Yeah. One of my golfers here.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question about like smaller sports, like not big teams like basketball. I mean, say golf. Obviously, no one really knows about us, and the student athletes themselves don't even have a chance to come and watch us because we're always so far away.
Yep. Yep. The question is, Sophia, right, is by the way, Pac-10 champion last year, right? Huh? Okay. You only get called out, one of the best golfers in women's golf. The question is, she plays a sport where they play off campus. They compete off campus, and it's really hard for students to get out there. I mean, I think we need to do a better job of. Well, you play where? At Trump down in, where is that? Down in Palos Verdes. On the East Coast. Well, it's hard. It's hard. I don't know if I can solve that problem. Anyway, the golf team's awesome. They won the Pac-10s last year. We had the individual Pac-10 champion, rated number 1 all year long. She was freshman of the year, and we're going to be good again this year, right? Maybe we can come out and watch a practice or something. Maybe that's what we're going to do. I'm sorry, I'm going to answer that one.
Other thoughts from any of you guys on what it would take to get you to basketball games or even baseball games? Bob and I, talk about that a lot. Love college baseball.
Free pizza.
He reminded me there was a time when they served beer at Dado Field.
I'd love to.
Those days are done.
I don't know.
I thought it was a rule. I mean, it was across the board.
New administration.
Okay, all right.
I mean,
all right. Artie Moreno, first thing he did, lowered the beer prices when he bought the Angels.
Well, I actually said, hey, we're not allowed to do that. If everybody came to the basketball games, the volleyball games, could I sponsor kegs at the 901 Club? I can't do that. But I asked.
Now that would have been breaking news here tonight. That would have been. Wow. So yeah, I want to hear about your thoughts about why basketball and baseball are not more heavy. Go ahead.
Speaking of basketball, when you know that a head coach is recruiting like a stud recruit who has some baggage, and the best example is, it hurts to say, but OJ Mayo. How do you balance the conflict, for instance, between this kid's going to do great for the program and take us to and he's getting money for a while, and he's a risky recruit.
Yeah.
How do you kind of research
Well, it's a great question. For me, we're not going to recruit those people. We got a no jerk rule. No jerks allowed. Now, people may turn out to be jerks when they get here, athletes, and we'll do something about them when they get there. But we want people with character. Character counts. Character counts in athletics too. And those guys only end up, hurting you. They give you pain, as we found out with him. And so, the rare, I've talked to Kevin O'Neill about it, he's a dilemma. The one and done guys are the greatest players, but they bring you the most heartache too. So we don't want that. We don't want that. Occasionally he may find that guy that has some character, but we're going to do our best to make sure we don't have an OJ Mayo person. He may be a one and done, but he's not going to be a jerk, at least.
one more comment. I think as USC students, we really appreciate when our athletes represent the university well. So
Yeah.
we'd love to hear that change. We don't want any more OJ.
I hear you. I hear you. Now, having said all that, I can't promise you that I don't know what all these athletes do at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've already had 5 hours of sleep by then. So, it's up to them. And we try to recruit people of character. I mean, that's where you have to start. You recruit people of character, and we train them and teach them as best we can. But that is our goal.
You're talking about bringing in student athletes with character, and obviously that's great, but what about the coaches? I know Kevin O'Neill is not thought highly of, his character is not thought highly of. It was horrible what happened in the Pac-10 tournament. You could say that kind of led to us spiraling out of control and us losing in the NCAA tournament, and Frank Cruz also is known as being the best guy. So,
Really? That's the first I've heard about Frank, actually. Are you a baseball player? Okay.
lots of coaches that I'm not playing with really dislike him.
Mhm.
Kevin O'Neill's more, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Kevin was here when I took the job, and I worked with Kevin. And when we had that incident, I suspended him for the Pac-10 tournament. I think he gets it. He knows he was, and I think it's not permissible to be like that. Okay. Now, I think Kevin's a good basketball coach, and I really hope he gets it done here, and I really hope he is here for a long, long time. I take no joy in firing people, because you're affecting that person, their wife, their family, the assistant coaches, their wives, their families, all their kids in school. You pull them up, they got to go to some other town. So, but we will do what we can to protect the brand of USC, which is a very, very good brand. And it's just like with players, with coaches, we're not gonna allow that. Kevin knows that. Okay, from here on out, Kevin understands it and embraces it. But you're right. I think me too. Me too. I shouldn't get a DUI. You really am really careful. I was careful before, but even so now, if I'm going out and speaking and I know I'm going to have a beer or two, I'll have a car service. I'm not going to drive because I don't want to ruin the brand for you either. So it's not just the kids. We need to look ourselves in the mirror as well. It's a very good point.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else that hasn't? Yeah, go ahead. All right, Kevin. Yeah.
All right. So, just 2 quick questions. One, in regards with the institution of the new women's sports, especially women's lacrosse,
right,
but not including men's soccer.
Right.
What's the decision?
Okay.
Do that for 2019, and if we'll ever get a men's soccer team. And the second question would be about since they're doing renovations at Poly Pavilion, how are we going to get our kids over to the sports arena during USC UCLA basketball games during their
How are we going to get there?
how are we going to get kids to go and force over
Oh.
during a referee during basketball season?
Okay. Well, you asked very disparate questions, so let me see if I can remember. What was the first one again?
Women's lacrosse. It's a good question about what was the decision about that, and maybe we could roll forward into the Title IX discussion.
Sure.
I want to at least touch on that.
Yeah, it's the 40th anniversary of Title IX. I celebrate Title. I think Title IX was the most seminal piece of athletic legislation in the history of the country. 1972, part of the Education. I think it was the Education Act of 1972. I know I'm very, very, very good friends with the first female scholarship player, a woman by the name of Barbara Hallquist. She played tennis here, won NCAA championships. She married one of my best pals, and I see her all the time. And she's like a 3-handicap golfer now. She's awesome. But and I have two daughters, one of whom played college sports, and I think I said seminal. It was really, really important to me. The most significant, maybe not the best, but the most significant sporting event I've ever been to was the 1999 Women's World Cup at the Rose Bowl. When I saw all those little girls, my two girls being kind of the same, with American flags painted on their faces and feeling so empowered that they could do anything, and they have gone on and done everything.
And 100,000 people at the Rose Bowl.
And 100,000 people. And, you know, my wife's generation didn't do sports, and certainly my mother's generation, but I think your generation does. And I think it's not only great for you, it's great for us, that we are all the beneficiaries of women playing sports and competing at the highest level, and then going on because of that, or maybe helping that, or athletics helping the fact they can go on and be CEOs and run companies. And, you know, I saw that with female CEOs that I work with in my old job, who many of them were former athletes. So I think Title IX, we're going to be celebrating Title IX here this year. We're having a Title IX conference. We're going to have speakers about Title IX. We're going to bring back a lot of our former and early female athletes to talk about Title IX and what it meant to them. Because it's just been awesome, to be perfectly honest. With regard to women's lacrosse, we're bringing on two new sports, women's lacrosse and women's sand volleyball. By the way, we lose money in every sport except football, and we kind of break even in basketball. We lose $1.5 million to $2 million in every sport. So it's just another way to lose more money. But lacrosse is going to be awesome, and women's sand volleyball is going to be awesome. And really, lacrosse was actually driven by Max Nikias, the new president. He really wanted to start women's lacrosse, and you know, it is the fastest growing sport in the West by a long shot. We have a lot of stud athletes, female athletes here in Southern California looking for a venue to play lacrosse, and now we can, just like football players want to come here. I think lacrosse females, young females, are going to want to play lacrosse here. We've got an incredible coach, Lindsay Monday. Played at Northwestern, won 2 national championships, then went on to coach 3 national championships. We can win a national championship here in lacrosse within 5 years, I think.
What about softball?
You know, no, we're not going to play softball. I got asked that question a lot.
When we talk about sports that you think a USC could be a power in, that would just come to mind just because of where we are.
Right. We could really be good in softball. There's no doubt about it. But we have limitations. Okay, we've chosen women's sand volleyball, which we're going to be really powerful in that. Mm-hmm. We're going to be powerful in women's lacrosse. There's only so many sports we can do. This budget that I have, I tell you, I lose money in all these sports. The more you bring on, as I said, it's just another way to lose money. If we bring on another sport, quite honestly, probably men's lacrosse. However, I mean, we have a Title IX. We'd have a Title IX issue. Equity issue if we do that. So we're just trying to look at those numbers, manage those numbers, and see if it could possibly make sense. Yep. So we're probably not going to play men's soccer.
Yep.
I don't know if you've answered this in the past or if you can answer this, but as far as our sanctions in the football team, who would you place the most blame on for that?
Who would I place the most blame on for
everything that happened?
Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush knew he was wrong. Reggie Bush knew more than once he was doing the wrong thing. And Reggie's parents. Now, I think Reggie's a nice kid. I don't really know Reggie particularly well. I think Reggie's a smart kid. I think he's a nice kid.
Now, would you, I guess, put any blame on possibly like Garrett or Pete Carroll?
I think we all have to share some of that, but again, what happened is, I understood it and I understand it. A lot of these things took place down in San Diego with, late in the night when people around here aren't either up or watching people in San Diego. We can't watch our 640 student athletes 24/7. Could we have done things better? Sure. We try and do things better. Yeah, we got to, you athletes know we got 8 zillion compliance people now working in the athletic department, which is a tough thing, balancing compliance with the thrill of sport. We don't want to damper the competitive spirit or the fun kids are having too, and that's kind of a delicate balance. But that's how I'd say it. That's how I'd answer it. Knew he was wrong. Period.
Do you feel, Pat, that you can know details about your athletes that are the most vulnerable to some of the things that trouble areas that you...
We have an obligation under the NCAA sanctions. We have in the sanctions. If you read them, they're actually available on the internet. With the penalties we have, they call them high-profile athletes. And I like to think all of our athletes in this room at USC are high-profile athletes. But they say we need to have a better handle on, a better monitor, understand what our higher profile athletes are doing. So we do. I mean, we try. I mean, as I said, we have 640 athletes. How many of those are high profile? It's kind of a nebulous term, but we do think we're paying attention, trying to pay attention to people who may be, potentially more at risk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What else? Hayes, what about you? You got something for Mr. Haden?
Hayes is going to have a big game on Saturday. Number 10 out there.
Right, right.
By the way, that's my old number. Wear it well, baby. If you don't, I'm going to retire it.
Okay. Let me ask you a question to play off something that when he was playing. What do you think about the idea of practicing at 7:45 in the morning versus 3 or 4 o'clock?
It's way better. I mean, you get to knock it out early and focus more on the schoolwork instead of knocking out classes and then worrying about practice at 3 in the day and then going to tutor right after that.
Yeah,
that's a good answer.
Tired in the afternoons, though? Is it? I guess you're gonna be tired either way, practicing or
yeah. I mean, it's just way better. I can use my time more wisely. I have school all day and then have more time to relax during the day.
Good.
How would you have felt about practicing that hour?
This is how old I am. In my day, students never stayed up at 2 o'clock. I mean, it wasn't that thing. So early morning, I would have loved it. Some of my friends, idiot friends, that I lived with, weren't athletes. They'd schedule classes at 8, 9, and 10, and wake up at 11.
Wait a minute, let me figure that
one out.
All right.
Yeah. So I always took early morning classes, and I could have done football. I was finished by 11 o'clock every day. It was great.
Wow. Okay. Good. Who else? Yeah.
I know you already touched on the idea of the professional team coming to Los Angeles and using the Coliseum, but on that same note, do you think that USC should get a master lease for the Coliseum? And if they did, what would be your short and long-term goals for the facility?
Yes, I think, the people, the AEG Corporation, who's already said this publicly, I'm not saying anything they haven't said, is they want to negotiate with USC rather than the Coliseum Commission. So this is AEG saying this, right? They're the ones that theoretically are bringing this team in. And for them to negotiate with us, we would have to have this ground lease, this long-term ground lease. So if we did that, right now under the terms of our lease, the Coliseum Commission is obligated to certain, I think it's like $50 million of renovations. For example, this past off season, which they didn't do, they were supposed to put in new seats. They couldn't do that. It was $21 million or something. And so they came to us and said, hey, we can't put in new seats, don't have the money. How about if we put in this new video board, which you're going to see on Saturday, which is going to be pretty cool. By the way, the intro video of the football team, you got to catch this when these guys walk out. It's awesome. If the video board works, it is going to be awesome. I'm telling you. Hayes, I'm going to give you a secret. You're going to see it tomorrow night. It's really cool. So they traded that thing. So the idea would be if we take control of it over the long term, we're going to have to really renovate it. And I don't know how much that is. It's going to cost to renovate it, but it's going to be a substantial amount of money it's going to take to really get, do the new seats. Probably redo the press box, redo bathrooms, just create a lot more amenities that we don't have. We have a chance to do something really, really special, potentially. It's just a matter of how much money it's going to cost and how much money it can raise.
Sort of going along with that potential attraction of a new NFL team to Los Angeles, it's been said in recent years that USC is sort of like Los Angeles' NFL team. How would the effect of having an
Good question, and that's why I said a little bit earlier, if I had my druthers, I would prefer not to have an NFL team here because I think it would affect attendance and I know it would affect corporate sponsorships. The NFL is the 800-pound gorilla, and the corporate sponsors, rather than coming over to see us, they're going to spend their dollars on the NFL. So it would affect us. Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to, which I know you probably wouldn't, but if it was possible to schedule an exhibition game with, say, Ohio State or Miami on January 1st of this year?
Let's see.
Why don't we have a round robin? Play one team for a half and another team for half.
I know you don't want to, you want to, play nice against the way, but if you wanted to, that is a possibility. Just think of it.
No, it really would be fun, wouldn't it? Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen. As a matter of fact, we can't play. I looked into, because we can't get to a bowl, I looked into taking our football team somewhere cool. But we might do work on a Habitat for Humanity project, but go in Hawaii. I mean, do something really cool with our team. Take them somewhere kind of like in lieu of a bowl game. We can't even do that. We can't do anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Is that in the back? Yeah. Okay.
So with the sanctions for and USC, not only did you get the scholarship restrictions, but they allowed players to transfer without penalty to their D1 school, and Sean Schultz Henderson withdrew his commitment to USC.
And went to Miami.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So besides the scholarship restrictions, how is sort of perceived image of USC hurting recruiting?
I don't think in recruiting. I think some of our athletes probably answer better than I. But I think there's a lot of things that are really attractive about USC. We've already talked about those. You're a student here. You came here. You came here because it's a great school. It's got great weather. It's got a great environment. All those things, and it has for the athletes as well. The athletes themselves think it's a gateway to the NFL or the NBA, and we embrace that. We want them to get there, but we also want them to graduate. We can do both of those things. We have a plan for each one of our kids to do that. So, the recruiting really hasn't been that. It wasn't affected the last 2 years when this all was swirling. We've had some very, very good kids come in. We anticipate having a very good class coming in next year as well. We are limited to 75 scholarships next year. That's really important for us to be able to keep those 75 guys healthy and eligible. That is, if we can do that, I think we can be okay. But if you lose some guys to knee injuries and 2 or 3 other guys aren't academically eligible, by that time you hit the 3rd year, you could be down to 61 instead of 75. That's a problem. So we've got a plan in place to really try to keep those 75 healthy is one thing, but certainly academically eligible. We got a real plan to help us through this next 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you in favor of a playoff system for college football?
I think we have a playoff system already. Surprisingly, that's not like. I think every week's a playoff. I think you lose 2 games, you're out. You're out of the playoffs. So we kind of have it. Is it imperfect now? Yes, this whole BCS thing is imperfect. But when I played and we won a national championship, we were a split champion one year because it was voted by sports writers. And there was a lot of controversy about that. Was it Oklahoma or was it SC? And it seems to me that every system that I've kind of looked at over the last 20 years has flaws. If you had a playoff and you had an 8-team playoff or a +1 format, let's just say it's an 8-team playoff, you don't think the 9th and 10th teams are going to be upset that they weren't ranked 7 and 8? I mean, you're going to still have that argument. So to me, there's no perfect system. But I think ultimately we're going to get there in college football.
Mm-hmm. Johnny, you have one. Yeah.
What is your favorite memory of John McKay?
My favorite memory of John McKay was my coach, right? It was my coach. And now, you talk about what wasn't an NCAA violation then, but certainly would be now. I lived with McKays my senior year in high school. Okay.
Is that an unfair recruiting advantage?
It's an unfair recruiting advantage. I was the top recruit as a quarterback of the country.
Yeah.
My parents moved. I wanted my senior year in high school. I wanted to finish my senior year in my high school, so the Coach McKay invited me to live in his house, and I did. That was strange.
So what was it like welcoming visiting coaches to come in to recruit you in a McKay house?
Well, McKay opened the door when Notre Dame came in or Alabama came in. era purchase agent or Barrett Bryant. I remember Barrett Bryant, the legendary Alabama coach, came in and he sat me down and he had this incredible Southern drawl. I called him a mumble. I didn't understand one word he said. I really did not understand. I just said, yes, coach. Yes, coach. I didn't say, yes, I'm going to Alabama, but yes, coach.
Right.
But favorite Coach McKay moment? Well, I'm actually going to tell it about his son. When I was living with the McKays, Coach McKay had J.K. McKay, who's an athletic director with me. Some of you may know. We've been best pals since I was 14. And we had to take his dad's car down to the car wash every Sunday to get washed. So I usually kind of volunteered to do it because I was getting free rent at their place, and I thought it was the right thing to do. But one Sunday, J.K. had to do this. Is a true story. People don't think it's true. J.K., who's an incredibly bright guy, but way out to lunch. I mean, really clueless about a lot of things. He takes his dad's car down to the local car wash, comes back with a different car.
I hate when that happens.
Comes back with the wrong car. It was kind of the same color, but not really. I don't think it was the same make and model.
Oh, that's great.
But it's not. It's kind of a JK, favorite JK story.
Yeah.
Based on your dealings with the NCAA and kind of people that you know, do you feel like there's a movement to address the moral hazard involved with the agents and relevant athletes, before they're at the level where you can actually talk to them?
Yeah, I think there is a move afoot to let athletes talk to agents earlier. Legally, we don't have to worry about. You can talk to them now after your junior in football. Baseball, you kind of talk to these people in high school, right? So there's kind of different rules for different sports and such. I think we want to empower our kids with as much information as they possibly can. And if they can get that from a legitimate agent, I say let's talk. Let them talk to them. As long as you don't, the agent doesn't pay them, right? So there's now knowledge is powerful, and we ought to give our kids as much knowledge as possible. I'd be absolutely fine with that. I would support it. There is some talk. It's not on our doorstep right now, but I wouldn't surprise me if it comes.
Mm-hmm. Pat just mentioned his high school career. He still is the first. He and John McKay, the first guys I ever saw. I had a chance to go out and see them play when they were seniors at Bishop Amat High School. Anybody here, Bishop Amat?
Lancers. There's a lot of them around SC.
Okay. Huh? West Covina.
West Covina.
Yeah.
I lived in West Covina.
Anyway, coming off the field, first time I ever saw high school athletes sign autographs were these two guys. I mean, they were like rock stars. Did you ever think you'd see the day when last Saturday there were 6 high school football games nationally televised by ESPN, and press conferences now and that whole thing. I wonder if you ever think about if that's good.
I'm kind of old school, and they're putting the hats on, and when they announce their, and I get it's kind of fun and exciting, but it kind of creates this undercurrent culture, I think, of entitlement that you battle, when you're really trying to have your kids be great student athletes. Now, the genie's out of that bottle. I can't stuff it back in. So we've got to once again embrace the reality of it and do the best we can to work with it.
Yeah. Somebody else will take one more question. Yeah.
Based on how the NCAA handled the sanctions with USC compared to Ohio State and Miami and Auburn, do you think that the NCAA kind of maybe has a West Coast bias?
Yeah, they used to say that about Heisman Trophy voters, East Coast bias. First of all, I think we really need to be clear, the NCAA has not even come close to being finished with Ohio State and just getting started with Miami, and I can't remember the other school you mentioned, Auburn. All that's still going on, okay? And they're still investing in Oregon and a whole bunch of other schools, North Carolina, I may have mentioned. So just because you're reading about these things and these self-imposed penalties, that is not the end of the day. The thing that was troubling to us when we went back in our appeal in January to the NCAA, and Max Takias, our president, it was a very cogent, good argument, and he pleaded, really, be careful. Be careful what you wish for here. If you don't give us some relief for what we have done and the penalties that you've given us for the actions we took, what do you do for those schools that come after us? And we didn't know about Ohio State or what was going to happen. Within 4 months, at least allegedly, much more egregious than what we did. Much more egregious. 72 players at Miami versus 1 or 2 if you count O.J. Mayo. So And there's going to be another uproar by the USC fan base, a lot of it directed at me and the NCAA. But if they don't really get hammered, Miami. But all I can say is let's wait till we get there. It's going to take a while. It took them 4 years to finally get the raw thing. I think they will get there. They're faster in these things now. But let's see what happens before we get too outraged.
Take my last one, yeah.
What is your favorite moment on the football field?
My favorite moment on the football field, actually, it was in the Rose Bowl my senior year. I just accepted a Rhodes Scholarship. I didn't think I was going to play professional football. I thought it was going to be the last game I ever played. Ended up throwing the winning touchdown pass to my best friend, J.K. McKay, and we won a national championship. Pretty good finish.
How did you celebrate it that night? What'd you do that night?
What did I do that night?
I always like to find out how athletes celebrated great moments or great games. Like, what did you do after the game?
I think I was in Doheny Library. I can't remember. I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't too outrageous. I know that.
So I'm guessing this is a special year. You go back to Notre Dame, and knowing how your mom kind of felt about the school, you go back as the USA athletic director, and I'm sure that you'll think about her.
Oh, yeah. Light a candle for at the grotto every time I'm there.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that she also advised you and your siblings to live life so that you have standing room only at your funeral.
Yep.
And I think seems to me that you won't have to worry about that.
Thank you.
We really we thank you so much for taking the time and joining
Thanks,
us
Jeff.
tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. See y'all Saturday. Red painted faces going nuts. With that video board, if the video board's working and you see this, you make sure you're there for when the team comes out because it is going to be awesome.
And tomorrow night there's the rally for the...
There's a rally for all sports. Fall sports. That. And we have
Galen Center.
Galen
right?
Center. Yeah,
Okay, that's tomorrow night.
All kinds of good stuff. We got women's volleyball against UCLA. Come out. Let's beat the Bruins. We've got women's soccer coming up here soon. Men's water polo, 3-time defending NCAA champs. Some good stuff.
One-stop shopping for your sports entertainment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you all.
See you
Have
guys
a
next
great
week. Okay.